And welcome back. Former Deputy Attorney General Sally Yates is one of those figures who seems to show up at key moments in the Trump presidency. In January of 2017, only days after the inaugural, Yates told administration officials she believed National Security Advisor Michael Flynn had lied to them about his contacts with the Russian ambassador to the U.S., Sergei Kislyak. Flynn was fired 2.5 weeks later when the Washington Post broke the story. Yates herself was fired as acting AG that same January for refusing to enforce President Trump's executive order restricting immigration from 7 predominantly Muslim countries. And the president now cites Yates as among those in the Justice Department who launched what he insists was the phony FBI investigation into his campaign's contacts with Russia. Sally Yates joins me now. Welcome. Very good to see you.
Thanks for having me.
Well, first of all, I want to ask you about the president in Wisconsin last night, referring to former FBI officials who began in this investigation as scum.
Yeah, you know, he's referred to them as scum. He's accused people of spying. And, you know, I think those are words that we really shouldn't be throwing around about the men and women in law enforcement and in our intelligence community.
The Mueller report cites 140 contacts, according to a tally in the New York Times, at least 140 contacts, including 13 from the president himself with Russia during the campaign and afterwards in the transition. Does this mean the president is completely exonerated, even though, because of a lot of other issues, not being able to interview the president, not being able to talk to a lot of the other witnesses, emails that were eliminated, there was no grounds for a prosecution?
Well, you know, if you read the entire Mueller report, I think it paints a really devastating portrait of a president and a campaign who welcomed a foreign adversary's illegal interference in our election, who then continually lied about it and then used the power of the presidency to try to thwart an investigation into his own conduct. That's not exoneration.
Well, the report makes it clear that there was no exoneration on obstruction, but speaking first to the Russian issue, which you just raised, if not for the Office of Legal Counsel prohibition against indicting a president, should there have been further steps? Do you think that there, in fact, on obstruction, would have been an indictment?
Well, you know, I've been a prosecutor for nearly 30 years, and I can tell you I've personally prosecuted obstruction cases on far, far less evidence than this. And yes, I believe if he were not the president of the United States, he would likely be indicted on obstruction.
So if he were the CEO of a company, if he were a private citizen, the at least 10 instances that are in the obstruction part of the report would have led to an indictment.
You know, I'm not sure that all 10 would. I think that Special Counsel Mueller did a very fair job in going through all 10 instances and laying out both the facts that established that he had committed the crime of obstruction, but also pointing out the defenses, both legal and factual. But there are several incidents that he described to which Special Counsel Mueller really couldn't point to any significant factual or legal defenses.
And which in particular do you cite as the most significant, the red flags that you see?
Well, the ones that he found that all 3 elements were satisfied were with respect to trying to fire Special Counsel Mueller through Don McGahn, then trying to get Don McGahn to lie about it later, not just his own lies, but trying to get someone else to as well, and then trying to reduce, to cabin the scope of the investigation to what's really nonsensical, to campaign interference in future elections.
Do you think that if he is not reelected and the statute of limitations does not run out until 2022, that he could still be prosecuted after leaving office?
Well, the Mueller report specifically references that, both what could happen in the short term with respect to Congress's role, but also the long term, whether he could be prosecuted. But, you know, I think really the bigger issue is not just whether or not this establishes a crime that can be proven beyond a reasonable doubt, but is this the kind of conduct that we should expect from the President of the United States? I mean, when the Russians came knocking at their door, you would expect that a man who likes to make a show of hugging the flag would have done the patriotic thing and would have notified law enforcement.
In fact, his personal attorney, Rudy Giuliani, said on this program just last week that there's no problem with the president, with the candidate, with the Trump campaign, welcoming support from a foreign adversary such as Russia.
Yeah, that's a shocking statement. And it also just reflects how they have moved the goalpost when the truth comes out. Recall at the beginning, they constantly said we didn't have anything to do with any Russians. And then when the truth comes out and reveals that that's a lie, now we have devolved down to there's nothing wrong with taking help, illegal help from a foreign adversary. Surely that's not where we've come to.
A lot of people think that Robert Mueller whiffed, that he should have pushed the envelope, he should have subpoenaed the president when he did not get a voluntary interview, and forced the president to take the fifth if he wants to.
Well, look, it's easy to sit in our armchairs and say what we would have done in those circumstances. I think what you see is that Robert Mueller did the job he was asked to do, and he called it right down the middle.
Some legal experts looking at the Mueller report look at the lines about Donald Trump Jr. saying that they wanted to interview him, were not able to, and then the next portion is redacted according to grand jury testimony with that code. Does that indicate to you, as it has to some legal experts, that Don Jr. may have gone in front of a grand jury and taken the fifth?
You know, certainly people have speculated as to that, and there's some indication of that, but I don't know for certain. But, you know, beyond that, it is absolutely remarkable to me that the President of the United States refused to sit down and answer questions about his or his campaign's involvement with the Russians in the 2016 election or obstruction.
Going forward, we have the Mueller report and now William Barr threatening to not even appear before the House. That still has to be worked out. Did the Attorney General, and I know you don't want to speak about the successors in the Justice Department, but what about the fact that he misrepresented the Mueller report in his initial 4-page summary and in his news conference referred to collusion 4 times, not a legal term, but a signal apparently to the president, certainly, taking the president's words, and misrepresented it even minutes before the report itself was released?
Well, let me answer it this way, is that the Department of Justice is not just another federal agency, and the Attorney General is not the president's lawyer. And I recall when I was named United States Attorney, we were all called to the White House for what was essentially a photo op with President Obama. And he came in, and the first words out of his mouth were, "I may have appointed you, but you don't represent me. You represent the people of the United States." And that's the way it's supposed to be.
And your implication is it's not the way it is right now.
Well, the people of the United States includes all the people of the United States.
We'll have to leave it there. Sally Yates, a great pleasure. Thank you for being with us.
Thanks for having me.
Hey, NBC News fans, thanks for checking out our YouTube channel. Subscribe by clicking on that button down here, and then click on any of the videos over here to watch the latest interviews, show highlights, and digital exclusives. Thanks for watching.